In this video I created an exploding coral reef base to make up for Games Workshop's bad design. Make sure to watch till the very end to see the final conversion. I have basically two major problems with the design of Games Workshop. First, there is basically no transition from the flat ground to the emerging water column, and second, their decision on letting the water tornado just shoot out of a grassland doesn't really make any sense to me. Most of the designs I could find online just went with the proposed Games Workshop grassland base, while some others actually had the same issue as I have, so they covered up the transition of the base to the water to make it look more natural, or they just went with a water base instead of a meadow overall. In order to let the base I had in mind come to life, I needed a lot of cork coasters, which you can get, by the way, super cheap at Woolworth if you have any of those stores around. I wanted to create a swirl of rocks that twist around the base exactly as the water does, to give the impression that the water just bursts the ground open and to also match the dynamic of the miniature itself. I therefore ripped out small pieces of cork and positioned them around the base to find a good looking composition. The exposed most top thin edges of the cork coasters were very fragile and could break off easily. To prevent damage in the future and to make them more durable in general, I just added some super glue to them. The cork soaks it up quickly and the glue makes those edges rock hard. After the base was finished, I realized I need some more cork pieces to emphasize the dynamic of the water tornado. So I went back in and added two isolated rock pieces that got torn out of the ground and are traveling with the water upwards towards the sky to give the whole miniature more motion. After priming, I started dry brushing the base with different grey tones to make the cork pieces look like rocks. In this process I realized that the texture of the cork actually doesn't make the pieces look like rocks, but more like corals, which basically fits this miniature way more too. In order to now make those corals look good and also match the rest of the mini, I had to take a step back and find a color scheme for the whole miniature. So I just took a quick photo of the mini, put it on Canva and started painting over it since I am too stupid to use Photoshop. I ended up with two different designs, but quickly decided for the right option you see here, because it felt a bit more balanced overall. So for the coral base, this meant I want to paint it in a variety of different color shades of blue, pink and turquoise. I started out by giving the whole base a wash of dark blue as a base tone. Then I took my dry brush and carefully added in some spots of dark purple. The whole process was a lot of trial and error, basically just going back and forth in the different color tones and just somehow trying to make it look good overall. To add some contrast, I created some bright highlights around the base with bright tones of turquoise and pink and even some very few spots of pure white. If you enjoyed the video so far and you don't want to miss out on any of my upcoming projects, please subscribe to the channel to also support me and help me grow. It would really mean a lot to me. Do you think this coral color palette was worth it, or would you have preferred me to paint it like general grey rocks? Let me know your opinion down below in the comment section. In my previous project I always worked myself through the paint shop color by color. So for example first the skin, then the armor and so on. This time though I decided to change the whole process up, so I started with first doing all of the base coats of the different parts of the model. That way I can get a good first impression of the color palette I chose and can judge the overall composition of the colors. I also have the option to easily change out a color in this step if I have to, without having to paint over fully painted parts yet. I already spent hours on carefully highlighting. When I chose my colors on Canva before, I tried to focus on only 3 main colors and divided them in a more or less 60-30-10 ratio. The main color, the 60%, will be blue and turquoise for the water and the armor and the eel. The second color, the 30%, will be purple for all of the leather parts like the pants and the cape. Those two main colors can also be found in the coral base. For my highlight color, the 10%, I chose red and I tried to spread it out evenly over the whole miniature with some dots of red appearing here and there, like on the swords, the gemstones and the fish. After applying all of the base coats, you can already get a good impression on how the final mini will look like in the end. The main challenge for painting the water was to create a smooth transition in color gradients from dark blue at the very bottom towards the white foam on the most top areas of the water. I slowly worked myself up from the bottom and down from the top with different colors because I wasn't quite sure yet how I would achieve that transition. I decided to leave all of those separated bubbly water parts at the very top of the water in pure white and let the transition happen further down the water tornado. I ended up doing small, careful stippling motions with white to imitate streams of foam on the blue water surface. For the leather parts of the miniature, I went with a subtle purple base tone. I really had to hold myself back there to not put too many highlights on the pants and the boots because they are quite hidden underneath the rest of the miniature, so it won't really be realistic to do so. For the cape on the other hand, I used the same base tones as for the leather parts and then added in some bright highlights in pink to make it shine. I went for a pale, bright skin tone to create a big contrast to the dark armor. I used only 3 different color gradients here and mixed some midtones with them for smoother transitions and really focused on making it look as realistic as possible. In this process I actually spent a lot of time going back and forth within those color gradients with thinned down colors to add in layer by layer of those shades to really make those transitions smooth and realistic. For all of the armor parts, basically same as for the skin tones, my main focus was to create very smooth transitions in between the different color gradients to really make it look like metal and armor, basically. I tried to limit all of the brighter colors to the surfaces of the armor actually facing the sky. For the highlights, I used a very bright turquoise color and even very few spots of white. I mainly used the highlights on the edges of the armor and try to limit them on the more unimportant parts of the miniature and therefore add in more around the most important parts, like for example the helmet and very dominant armor parts. I honestly am very happy with how the armor turned out, and I realized that adding in a lot of contrast will almost always improve the overall appearance, so being brave while painting really pays off. Looking back now at my previous projects, I really feel like the miniature actually look kind of dull because I really didn't dare to do a lot of contrast. I just wanted to play it safe basically. But yeah, you never stop learning. And don't get me wrong, I know I still have a long way to go. To finish off the armor, I went over the embedded gemstones and added some bright highlights in yellow to give them like a glow from inside. For the hilts and handles of the swords, I kept it very simple and just added in some bright red highlights. I really wanted to give it all though on the blades this time, so I decided to give non-metallic metal another try. I started off by choosing 3 different grey tones for the blades and then worked myself up slowly in brightness. With the darkest color, I decided where I wanted the highlights to be placed. With the following color gradients, I went over the already painted darker areas and added in those highlights again, always on a slightly smaller surface. To finish it up and to add in a bit more contrast, I added in some bright white highlights on the edge in the center and around the blade. I am personally very satisfied with the outcome. It is by far my best try ever on non-metallic metal, even though I think I added in a bit too many highlights per blade. Like right now I have more or less like 3 or 4 on each side of each blade. So what do you think on this try on non-metallic metal? If you have any tips on how I can improve here further, please let me know in the comments, since I really would love to improve further. To finish up this miniature, I still have to paint that little fish and the eel at the very bottom of the mini. For the fish I picked up red again and added in some more highlights in orange and yellow as I did for the gemstones and the armor. By adding slightly different red tones, I changed it up a bit from the hilts on the sword and prevented it from looking too monotonous. I painted the teeth basically just like I would paint bones to not make them look too bright and more like what you would expect for a fish of the deep sea. Since I felt like the base of the miniature could use a bit more purple and pink, I decided to paint the back of the eel in those colors. I added in bright pink freckles on the most top parts of the eel. The belly I left in dark blue and added in some shades of brighter blue to highlight some parts. I then finished it off with some bright pink and some white highlights. Thank you so much for watching it till the very end. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you don't want to miss out on my upcoming projects and you want to support me, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And now, enough talking and let's enjoy the finished miniature.